The other day, I was speaking with a lady in the NGO space here in Abuja, and her organization is concerned about the plight of children, particularly in those communities where they have outmoded ideas about infant mortality and the spiritual effects, if we can put it that way, of having twins and multiple births. So I'll spare you the gory details, but just in case there are those of you who have heard some of the rumors around communities and multiple births in the FCT, it turns out that there is some truth to it because this is the second NGO. This is the second person I've run into who runs an NGO who is trying to do some work in that space to rescue those vulnerable children who are in imminent danger of being buried with their moms or sacrificed in some other way. So, for those of you who are involved in that kind of work, I'd like to say, or rather, I'd like to extend my prayers to you guys that God will continue to bless your work because I guess we can't have more than enough of you guys who go around trying to educate our people and right the wrongs that are a result of some of these beliefs. Anyway, this is not to sensitize the work that they're doing. Maybe I'll do so on a future podcast. But for now, in her attempts to raise funds, she has come across some challenges that I figured would come in handy for those of us who are event industry professionals. So she does a lot of fundraising, and it's mostly over WhatsApp, phone calls, that sort of thing, starting off with friends, family, and associates, like most of us usually do when we're getting ready to go into business. And so she does a lot of emailing and WhatsApp messages. So, excuse me. So she does a lot of emailing and sending WhatsApp messages back and forth. And she just remarked during our conversation that the whole thing of sending personalized messages seems to work very well because she's getting good responses. And from people who haven't responded in the past, there are some people who say, you know what, you've been persistent, and I can tell that you're not blanket messaging these things. I can see that you're addressing this specifically to me, and so because of that, this year I'm going to be of support. And then, we had a laugh about it, and she said this personalization thing is highly effective, but she doesn't know why it should make a difference. Now, I didn't bother explaining why, but after the conversation, because the reason why we're having this conversation anyway was to see how I can help the organization out when it comes to storytelling through the media that they use, and to see how this can generate funds. So for those of you who have listened to older podcast episodes where I talk about things relating to the NGO space, I hope you guys are now beginning to appreciate how the skill of sales and personal selling comes in handy no matter what discipline we're involved in. So you might be a wedding planner today, but you are interested in setting up some NGO to take care of the kids back home, in Popsy's village, or some problems that you see in communities around you, or even if it's built around, the ecology and the environment. But sales skills are going to come in very handy. Now, the thing is just that in the NGO space, they don't call it sales; they call it fund development. But it's pretty much the same thing, in my own opinion. Anyway, but we'll talk about that some more in future episodes. So so the general conversation that we had was around that, how my skills can be lent to the effort to help them develop funds, or as I would like to say, grow sales. And so I didn't go into detail about why it makes a difference, but just in case there are some of you over there, some of you listening right now, who don't see the importance, who don't get why the whole thing works, I'm going to try and offer a solution today to try and proffer something so that you can understand why this whole thing about personalization when you're sending out messages, to see why it is effective. Now, the thing is, especially with the state of technology today. We receive a lot of messages. People get broadcasted a lot all the time. People are being talked at and talked down to over on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, you name it. You have multiple messages all the time. And then, especially since we are very enterprising people these days, and everybody wants to be an entrepreneur, everybody has a business or some businesses that they're trying to promote. So the bottom line is you have 1,000 contacts on your phone, and about 100 of them out of that 1,000 think that they can broadcast messages to you every day, every other day, every week for the rest of the year. So there are lots of broadcast messages that people receive that are not relevant, and so because they're not relevant to your situation, they are downright annoying. So people get into the habit of deleting, and when some people get tired of deleting, they mute, and some people get tired of muting and they block. Other people don't want to block, like my mom and I. We don't like blocking messages because, well, we don't want to ruffle any feathers, or we'd rather not just boat the conversation. And so we've discovered this thing on WhatsApp where we just archive the messages. Now, when you archive, it doesn't show up in your feed. And so because of that, people, family members, associates who are in the habit of sending broadcast messages, they keep on doing it every day. And finally, my mom and I are free, and we don't have to worry about those messages anymore, because it's going to fall on deaf ears. It's as if we never saw them in the first place. Now, for those of you who are in the habit of sending broadcast messages, I repeat, this is what is happening to most of your messages. People are looking at it, and they're hitting swipe and then delete. After delete a couple of times, they get tired, and then they just hit block on WhatsApp. Because the thing is, if you block on WhatsApp, the person can still call you over regular phone line. Some people who don't want to block are just going to do that thing of select multiple messages, read all. When people get tired of doing that, they're going to hit archive. Bottom line is there are loads of options out there that people take advantage of to make sure that they do not see your WhatsApp broadcast messages. Now, in the midst of all this, because we're receiving all kinds of silly messages about cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, Buhari, the state of the economy, the state of the UK, what else? The state of the American economy. What else? Your cousin has started selling human hair, Peruvian weave, somebody's selling shoes, somebody's doing this, somebody's starting that, or people are trying to flex and show how they're living a good life, so they're broadcasting pictures about their holidays abroad or whatever. Because we're tired of all this crap, it really is a breath of fresh air when you receive a message that was intended for you and for you alone. Now, of course, double marks if it turns out to be a relevant message. And so that's the reason why personalization works, because there's a whole barrage of messages out there that people are being exposed to. And so it's just a breath of fresh air, and it seems like simple and common courtesy when a message is addressed directly to you. So in this case, where the NGO is doing something about children, let's say you're not concerned about children, or you're not concerned about the plight of these kids, whether they die or not, and when they're rescued, whether they go to school or not, or whether they are fed or not. But the thing is, eventually, at some point, I think you just have to, just like some people did, eventually you appreciate the fact that it's personalized outreach, and even if it's just 2K, even if it's just 2,000 naira or whatever, just to get the person off your back. Eventually you're going to do something, and I think that's the reason why she experiences high conversion rates when she's trying to reach out to people this way, sending WhatsApp messages and SMSs, but keeping these messages highly personalized. Before I continue, some of you will say that's a lot of work, and yes, that's a lot of work, but there's some ways around it. I use external keyboards, and my brother also uses external keyboards as well. Plus, my brother uses one of those fancy Samsung phones that you can download something and you hook it up to your wirelessly to your TV if you have a smart TV. So my brother is able to sit down comfortably in his living room, hook up to his TV with the external keyboard, and then respond to messages that way. And if he needs to make a phone call, of course, he can just call and pick up the phone right next to him and then continue responding to messages as well. So I use the external keyboard. I don't have the fancy Samsung, and I don't have a smart TV. So I'm doing all these things just by hooking up the Bluetooth keyboard to my phone and responding to messages that way. Now, this lady that I mentioned, she's doing it the other way because she uses WhatsApp web, and so the whole interface comes up on her laptop. And so, because of that, you're able to get some speed. You can do some copy and paste, and then, of course, typing on the keyboard. Well, for some of us anyway, we're much more proficient at typing on the keyboard rather than typing on the phone. So, these are ways that you can get around it in case this is one of your hang-ups. Now, eventually, you probably will get to the point where you're going to broadcast anyway. But the thing is, in these early days, having to go through the hassle of personalizing this message is what is going to give you the intel that you need about what the relevant messages are that you need to highlight. So by the time she's done this for a number of years more, she has already done this for I think 3 years now. By the time she's been at this for 5 years, 7 years, she can confidently send a broadcast message that hits certain what will I say? That hits certain communication. No, how do I put it? That hits certain messaging and is going to hit the mark. But that's because for 7 years she's been doing this manually, so she knows, she has a fair idea of who to send these messages to. Should I send them to single fathers? Should I send them to single mothers? Should I send them to people of this income bracket or that income bracket? Should I send it to people in Abuja? Should I send these messages to people in Lagos, in Port Harcourt, or whatever? She'll get a fair sense of who the recipients are and people who receive these messages favorably, as well as the kind of things that she has to say, so that people are favorably disposed to giving the foundation money. So all that years of hard work is going to come in handy in the future, so that when she now starts doing broadcast WhatsApp messages or email campaigns or whatever, she has all the intelligence, all the information, all the data that she needs to make informed decisions. So so that's pretty much the reason why it works, because it's when it's personalized, it's relevant and it's courteous, if nothing else, because a lot of people today don't care about wasting our time and our attention. So that is the reason why it works. Now, how does this apply to those of us in the wedding space? Because it's not as if wedding photographers or wedding planners or decor people or cake artists are blasting messages out to their contacts to say, book me, hire me as your wedding photographer, things like that. So yes, we cannot do those kind of broadcast messages. But there's one thing that those of us in the wedding space try to do, and that is the whole messages around holidays at the end of the year. What else? General special occasions, Independence Day, Children's Day, blah blah blah, things like that. And people use that as a good avenue to keep in touch. But we now make the mistake of broadcasting these messages. And I think that this is doing you more harm than good, because there's a limit to how many Happy Children's Day messages that someone will tolerate from you just because you were their wedding photographer 5 years ago, if currently they still do not have any children, and you still keep sending them those messages. Happy Children's Day, Happy Children's Day, Happy Children's Day. Or Happy Independence Day, but your former brides or grooms don't give a hoot about Nigeria. Quite frankly, they're trying to work their way out so they can escape to Malaysia or Canada or the United Kingdom or wherever. So there's a limit to the number of messages that people are going to tolerate. Like there's this makeup artist who I did some work with close to 8 years ago, and she keeps sending these broadcast messages, and for some reason the messages are always thank you very much, ma, for your patronage, for your business, for whatever. And I just find it really shocking that she's sending this to everybody in her contact list, even though obviously this thing is tailored at women, but there's some of us in our contact list that are guys. So every year it's thank you, ma, appreciate you, whatever, ma. How are you doing, ma? And I am not a ma. I am a guy. I'm a dude. We've worked together before. If you must send these sorts of messages, Happy New Year and everything, at the very least, you can do what I said. Looked at what I've suggested using your computer or using a Bluetooth keyboard. At least just copy and paste. Copy and paste. Okay, select all the women in your on your contact list, and then blast that message to all women. And then select another message, select all the males, copy and paste, and then send to all. So even that is not ideally the level of personalization that I would recommend, but it's a whole lot better than you have 1,000 people on your phone. Let's say 6,000 of them are men, and then they wake up to "Good morning, ma. How is your day today, ma? Thank you very much for your business patronage last year in 2021." I've never used a makeup artist. I probably never will. Maybe when my acting career kicks off. I've been invited to appear on some TV shows by friends of mine who do TV stuff. So maybe one day I might be an actor. But until that time comes, I'm not going to use a makeup artist, and I am not a woman. So there are lots of us who are doing these sorts of things. Happy New Year, Happy Christmas, thank you for your business, Happy Eid al-Fitr, Happy Ramadan, what else? Happy Independence Day, even recently, Happy Halloween, and all these things. At the very least, let's try and make these messages targeted, and they'll be relevant, and they will give us the goodwill that we are trying to gain, instead of ending up being blocked, ignored, pushed to spam if you're doing it through email, or being pushed to archive so that people do not see your messages at all. Or like one of my cousin does, I think she selects, is it mute? You can mute messages too. There's mute 6 months, mute 3 months, mute 1 year, and I think mute indefinitely. And so she's just done mute indefinitely for a number of people, and then archived as well for good measure. So so that's the reason why personalization works. In your follow-up attempts, please, wedding industry professionals, photographers, makeup artists, decor people, MCs, we want to be in touch with our clients, but let's try and personalize the messages. If we don't have the liver, as we say, or the power to go about personalizing for everyone, there are some simple options that I've given here. A Bluetooth keyboard, copy and paste. You should be able to hit your whole contact list in about 30 minutes if you just select all and then deselect everybody who's a man, and then send that "Good morning, ma" message to all the women, and then select all the men, deselect the women, copy and paste, and send the Happy New Year messages to all the men. So that's not ideal, but it's something. So yes, personalization works. This is the reason why it works, and these are ideas about how we can use them in our businesses. So thank you very much for listening to the Sales for the Nigerian Wedding Industry podcast. I'm your host, Abuja-based sales consultant, Tavishima Ayede. Thank you very much for your time and attention. I'll catch you guys at the next recording.